And welcome back, my friends. Thom Hartmann here with you. John Dean on the line with us, the former counsel to President Richard Nixon, chief minority counsel to the Judiciary Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, associate director of the Law Reform Commission, author of numerous books, including Worse Than Watergate, The Secret Presidency of George W. Bush, Conservatives Without Conscience, his most recent Broken Government, How a Republican Rule Destroyed the Legislative, Executive, and Judicial Branches, and he writes regularly over at findlaw.com. John Dean, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Tom.
Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
I want to get into your thoughts as a legal expert on the legal dimensions of this whole torture issue. And in our first hour, we had on Darius Rejali, arguably the world's leading expert on torture and its impact on society and culture, and as well as the torturers. But before we get into that, another question. The last hour, and Arlen Specter, flipping to the Democratic side, has raised this issue of the Democrats, ever since the Nixon presidency, essentially behaving like battered wives. I was playing some audio earlier. You've probably heard it of LBJ talking with Everett Dirksen when he learned, this was just released in the last year, when he learned that Nixon was, during the Nixon-Humphrey campaign, was talking to the South Vietnamese and had gotten them to refuse to go to the peace talks, and LBJ saying this is treason, and then he talks to Clark Clifford and says, we've got to stop this investigation by the Christian Science Monitor. We can't let them know what Nixon's doing because it'll be bad for the country. The same thing with Iran-Contra. The Democrats did not pursue that investigation. It would have been bad for the country. The same thing, arguably more recently, on exposing Dick Cheney's, he had two commissions, energy and counterterrorism. He didn't pursue, he aggressively pursued energy in a hidden fashion. The Counterterrorism Commission never met until September of 2001. The Democrats haven't pushed that for the good of the country. Are they going to roll over on torture in the same way? It all seems like this started with the administration that you were a part of. I'm curious your insights on that.
Well, they didn't roll over on Watergate, though, did they?
Well, I'm wondering, because there were some folks who were suggesting early on that in fact they should, and in fact I've got the notes here.
Actually, Teddy Kennedy was the driving force behind Watergate. He's the Congress taking action.
Yeah, it was Robert Strauss who tried to shut down the Watergate investigation.
And that was working with John Mitchell.
Right.
They did settle the civil lawsuit, and Strauss was trying to use his good offices to make it go away. But
right, and he was chairman of the DNC.
He was chairman of the DNC, but congressional Democrats were hell-bent on taking it the distance, and indeed did do so. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to understand the current position on the Democratic Party on this issue of torture. I noticed in the New York Times this morning the CBS New York Times poll, that said that 62% of the American people agreed with Obama that we shouldn't have hearings on torture. I thought that was a surprising number of just the fact that this is typically Obama's position, and most Americans have now adopted that position also. Maybe they don't understand the implications of it. Maybe they haven't heard the first hour of your show. Maybe they haven't looked at the problems this is causing us around the world. It baffles me, frankly, that if they would roll over on this, but it appears that's going to be what happens.
Well, there may be some sort of complex cross-current in some of that logic, like, let's not air our dirty laundry, but also let's not ever torture again kind of thing. I don't know. I can't speak for the American people. What we do know is that, and this is one of the things that Darius Rejali pointed out, is that in the history of this republic, we have never had more than 40% of Americans, and in the military, even after 9/11, never over 44% of American soldiers were willing to torture, even if they knew that it would save the life of one of their compatriots. That we have never been a nation that has sanctioned torture.
Understandably, and it's reached some threshold now where I'm not sure how people really understand the issue. There's been the conflicting debate as to whether waterboarding is indeed torture. People sort of don't really focus on this. They don't want to focus on this. It's pretty ugly stuff. Yeah. And that might explain also why they want to just get it behind us and move on. But I'm not sure that the Democrats in the Congress are going to roll over on it. I just don't know. I know Conyers and others want to certainly pursue it. Leahy does. So we'll have to see what sorts itself out. But nothing's happening very quickly, though. And the other thing is, as far as prosecutions go, there are statutes of limitations that come in play here between 5 and 8 years for war crimes or various other offenses that might be charged under the federal statute. So you're getting out at the outer end now, where some of this is just going to become moot as far as anybody ever getting prosecuted for it.
That's a huge ouch. I mean, that concerns me. We had Elizabeth De La Vega on the program last week, and she was suggesting that were a prosecutor impaneled, that would immediately, since the independent prosecutor law expired in 1999, that would immediately invoke a grand jury, and that would basically, basically throw everything into secrecy, which would not. And that right now there's this, sunlight is the best disinfectant process, and a lot of information is coming out, and that's actually a good thing. I'm curious your thoughts on what's the best way to approach this. I read
Elizabeth's argument, and the conspicuously absent factor in her argument was the statute of limitations,
right.
That it is getting towards the end. So, in other words, if some action isn't taken to toll that statute at some point soon, there will be no prosecution. So but I do agree with her. In fact, there was talk during my days in the Nixon White House. One of the ways to bury Watergate was to get it into the grand jury and keep it out of the Senate, where there were incipient hearings at that point, because it does indeed disappear when it goes into the grand jury because of grand jury secrecy. Watergate tended to be a fluke because Judge Sirica, at one point, late in the game, released the information from the Watergate special prosecutor to the House impeachment inquiry, the grand jury proceedings, and without that, I'm not sure they would have ever been able to build the case they were building against Nixon. Congress isn't very good at investigating. The Senate Watergate hearings were a true exception in the panoply of years of investigative hearings. It was a real exception. Sam Dash did a remarkable job of building that case.
Yeah, he did. And also, if it gets thrown into the grand jury, it can get very narrowly circumscribed. I mean, look at what happened with the Scooter Libby Valerie Plame investigation that somehow never went to Dick Cheney.
Exactly. He would just remained a cloud hanging over the the trial,
right.
As Fitzgerald put it.
So are you suggesting that perhaps Congress should be looking at extending the statute of limitations on war crimes, or are there other laws under which people could be prosecuted for promoting torture within the last administration?
Tom, where I think this thing may get sorted out is even going to be more of an embarrassment, and that is one or more foreign prosecutors will actually take action. I'm told that the proceedings in Spain, while the Attorney General of the country came out against a war crimes proceeding, that there are others, including the judge with jurisdiction, that may not feel the same way as the country's Attorney General. There are other countries that are looking at this. Now, as I say, this will be a monumental embarrassment. The statute is longer in those situations, so I'm not sure even if we do fold internally that it's going to go away. That's the first thing. I think there is a true movement abroad to hold America responsible for this activity.
Right.
That's not going to disappear. That's why I think that somebody in the Congress or holder should take some action and cut that off to at least let us do the right thing ourselves.
We're talking with John Dean, findlaw.com, his most recent book, Broken Government, absolutely brilliant. John Dean, we have just a minute here, and a little less than a minute in this segment, and if you can stick around, I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
After the break, great. Just very quickly, do you think that the consolidation of this into one committee in Congress is wise, or this dispersal approach that is happening right now is a good way to go?
Well, with the Iran-Contra, I think Cheney's fine hand showed there, where he worked very hard to get a joint House-Senate hearing to look at Iran-Contra. That's the best way to not investigate anything.
Right.
Those don't work.
Yeah.
You've got inner House and Senate conflicts. You have staff that can't service everybody. The hearings are so big that the cross-examination is weak. So that's a non-starter to do a joint committee hearing type of investigation.
Right.
I think you need a special select committee, one of the House or the Senate.
Interesting, because otherwise you get all the rivalries and the egos and
exactly.
and everything else going. John Dean is with us, findlaw.com, for his writings, his most recent book, Broken Government, How Republican Rule Destroyed the Legislative, Executive, and Judicial Branches. We will be right back with John Dean after this. Stick around. Thom Hartmann here with you